They called him O Bruxo, the magician. A man who didn't play football, he danced with it. Ronaldinho made the world smile with a flick of his boot, a flash of his teeth, and a samba rhythm that reminded everyone why they fell in love with the game in the first place. He wasn't just talented, he was mythical, a man who dribbled like he was defying gravity, passed like he was reading time, and celebrated like joy itself was a religion. And then, he disappeared. No injury, no farewell tour, no dramatic decline, just a slow fade, a quiet vanishing act, as if the magician had slipped behind the curtain and forgotten the way back. At his peak, he outshone them all. Zidane, Figo, Beckham, even an emerging Messi. Camp Nou trembled with delight when he touched the ball. Defenders gave up before he even made his move. Fans of rival clubs clapped for him because deep down, we all knew he was a gift. But behind the contagious grin and elastic legs, something darker was stirring. Whispers grew louder. Nights got longer. Training sessions were missed. The boy who once played barefoot in the favelas of Porto Alegre now danced under nightclub lights until the party swallowed the player. This is not just the rise and fall of a genius. This is the story of how joy turned into emptiness, how brilliance became burden. This is about the cost of being adored by millions while drifting further from yourself. Ronaldinho didn't just leave the stage. He became a ghost, smiling in old highlight reels, but lost in real life. And no one saw it coming. To understand Ronaldinho, one must first understand the world he came from and the world he changed. He was born as Ronaldo de Assis Moreira in the cradle of Brazilian flair. Porto Alegre, a city pulsing with rhythms of samba, street football, and struggle. His father died when he was just 8 years old, collapsing beside the family's swimming pool, a painful fracture that never truly healed. His older brother Roberto was already a promising footballer, but an injury curtailed that dream. In the shadow of loss and sacrifice, young Ronaldinho played not with pressure, but with poetry. Brazil in the 1990s was already a land of football gods: Pelé, Zico, Romario. But the culture was shifting. Football was becoming more physical, more tactical, more structured. The beautiful game was being trimmed, tamed, and televised. Yet in the streets, barefoot kids still played like artists. Ronaldinho was the last great export of that raw, rebellious energy. His talent was spotted early. At 13, he scored 23 goals in a single youth match. Yes, 23. By 17, he was dazzling for Grêmio, turning stadiums into carnivals. Then came Europe. In 2001, he signed for Paris Saint-Germain, and though he clashed with coaches over discipline, his magic was impossible to ignore. No one could stop him. Not in League One, not in Europe, not even on the global stage. By 2002, he was a World Cup champion with Brazil, playing alongside Rivaldo and Ronaldo Nazario. But Ronaldinho wasn't just a sidekick. He scored that impossible, debated, unforgettable lob over David Seaman in the quarterfinals. Was it a fluke or genius? It didn't matter. The world gasped, and a star was born. But Paris was only the rehearsal. In 2003, he made the fateful move that would define his legend: Barcelona. The Catalan giants were in disarray at the time. Real Madrid had the Galacticos. Barca was broken, desperate, directionless. They needed a savior. And he arrived, with long hair, crooked teeth, and a smile that would light up Camp Nou. Ronaldinho's debut season was electric. He scored, he assisted, he laughed. But it was more than that. He restored belief. He reintroduced joy. He made football feel alive again in a club that had forgotten how to dream. And then, in 2004 and 2005, he won the FIFA World Player of the Year twice in a row. In 2005, he received a standing ovation at the Santiago Bernabeu, home of eternal rivals Real Madrid, something only Diego Maradona had achieved before him. It was a moment that transcended rivalry. Even enemies could not deny the beauty he brought. At his peak, Ronaldinho played like football was invented for him alone. He didn't run. He glided. He didn't pass. He painted. He didn't celebrate. He danced. He was not part of the system. He broke the system. The world of football in the mid-2000s was in a strange transition. It was the end of the Zidane era, the twilight of Figo and Beckham. Lionel Messi was just a skinny teenager. Cristiano Ronaldo was a raw showman in Manchester. For a brief, shimmering moment, Ronaldinho stood alone, unchallenged, untouchable. But the cracks, like hairline fractures in marble, had already begun to form. The same joy he exuded on the pitch began to manifest recklessly off it. Late nights, missed training, rumors of discontent. Club staff whispered that he was training less and partying more. Frank Rijkaard, his coach, protected him, but the storm was brewing. Ronaldinho came from a culture of expressive, emotional football. But in Europe, expectations were more rigid, more unforgiving. He was never a gym freak, never obsessed with tactics, never the kind of player to analyze his performance in front of a laptop. He played from the heart. But the heart, unlike muscle, cannot be trained. Worse still, the childlike joy that once powered him began to drain. The same smile he gave the world was masking exhaustion. He became isolated, less sharp, a little slower. Injuries began to linger. The magic was still there, just less frequent, less focused. The magician was slipping. In 2008, Barcelona made the unthinkable decision. They let him go, sold him to AC Milan. Pep Guardiola, just beginning his managerial era, chose to build around the younger Lionel Messi and quietly shut the door on a legend. No farewell match, no grand goodbye, just a quiet press release. And so Ronaldinho left Barcelona as he had arrived, smiling. But this time, the smile felt different. As he stepped into the final chapters of his career, in Italy, then in Brazil, and eventually in obscure clubs far from the spotlight, the glow began to fade. He was still loved, still worshipped in memory, but the world had moved on. What happened behind those dazzling years? Why did he fall so far, so fast? The next part of this story will go deeper, into the chaos behind the curtain, the demons behind the joy, and the night that never seemed to end. The rise of Ronaldinho wasn't just meteoric, it was mythical. But like all legends who fly too close to the sun, his descent came fast, quiet, and wrapped in shadows. In 2004, he was crowned FIFA World Player of the Year. In 2005, he defended the title. And in 2006, he led Barcelona to a glorious La Liga and Champions League double, the club's first European crown in 14 years. That version of Ronaldinho was untouchable. Coaches planned around him, defenders prayed before him, and fans across the globe fell under his spell. He had everything: skill, charm, trophies, and the world at his feet. But even then, the signs were there. He started arriving late to training. Sometimes he didn't show up at all. Insiders at the club whispered that the nightclubs of Barcelona had become his second home. His fame had grown beyond football. He was now a global icon, a face for Pepsi, Nike, and PlayStation. Music stars wanted to party with him. Politicians wanted to be seen with him. He was the symbol of happiness, but behind the scenes, he was slipping. Frank Rijkaard, his coach and defender for many years, tolerated the decline, partly out of loyalty, partly because Ronaldinho's talent still delivered when it mattered. But as time wore on, that brilliance became unpredictable. The smiles remained, but the sharpness dimmed. In 2006, Ronaldinho underperformed in the World Cup. Brazil, reigning champions, were expected to dominate, but the team was sluggish. Ronaldinho, their talisman, looked exhausted, mentally and physically. Gone were the fireworks from 2002. In their place was a man burdened by expectations, dulled by fame. Brazil exited in the quarterfinals. It was the first real dent in his crown. Back at Barcelona, things grew worse. Younger players like Lionel Messi were emerging. Messi worshipped Ronaldinho. He once said, "He was the best in the world and helped me when I came into the team." But football moves fast. The club needed discipline, structure, and focus. Pep Guardiola, a student of perfection, had seen enough. When he took over as coach in 2008, he made the ruthless decision. Ronaldinho had to go. Guardiola didn't criticize his talent. He simply said, if he stayed, it would have affected Messi. In other words, the magician had become a distraction. In July 2008, Ronaldinho left for AC Milan, still smiling, still adored, but not the same. Italy offered a slower pace, a softer spotlight, and for a while, he shone again. In 2009, he was Milan's top assist provider. There were glimpses of the old magic, a no-look pass here, a bending free kick there. But the flame was flickering. His off-field habits followed him. Reports of excessive drinking, skipping training, and late-night partying haunted his every step. And then came the night in Milan, January 2010. A reporter from La Gazzetta dello Sport leaked that Ronaldinho had attended 3 nightclubs in one evening, returning home as the sun rose, just hours before a crucial match. Milan lost. fans began to turn. The Italian media, never forgiving, sharpened their knives. They called him a tourist with boots. The decline accelerated. By 2011, Milan released him. He returned to Brazil, signing with Flamengo, then Atletico Mineiro, and later clubs in Mexico. In Brazil, he was treated as a national treasure, but he no longer belonged to the elite. He played more for fun than for glory, showing flashes of brilliance, but mostly floating through matches. The magic, once spontaneous and electric, now felt nostalgic and rare. And yet the world still watched, not because they believed he would return to greatness, but because they missed who he once was. The fall didn't stop with football. In 2020, Ronaldinho and his brother were arrested in Paraguay for using fake passports. The images were surreal. The man who once ruled Europe, now posing for mugshots. He spent 32 days in a Paraguayan prison, followed by house arrest in a luxury hotel. While in jail, reports say he participated in a futsal tournament, scoring 5 goals and giving 3 assists, as if to remind the world, even in chains, who he once was. But the laughter in those moments couldn't hide the sadness. Friends claimed he was lost, that he no longer had purpose without football, that the man who once represented joy was now a ghost of himself, living in the shadows of his own legacy. Journalists asked, how can someone so gifted, so beloved, fall so far? But maybe that was the answer. He gave everything so freely, his genius, his joy, his spirit, that when the cheers faded, there was nothing left for himself. He wasn't built for endurance, he was built for enchantment. Ronaldinho didn't burn out, he drifted, like a melody you can't quite hum anymore. The next part will reveal what few dare to speak, the dark truths behind the legend, the hidden pain behind the smile, and why Ronaldinho, the last footballer who made the world believe in magic, was never truly meant to last. He smiled through it all. Even when the press shredded his legacy, even when coaches shut doors, even when the world whispered that he had become a cautionary tale, Ronaldinho smiled. But behind that iconic grin was a man unraveling in silence. There's a story once told by a former teammate. After a match where Ronaldinho barely moved, barely cared, he walked off the pitch, laughed with a club official, and said, "They still sing my name, don't they?" It wasn't arrogance. It was deflection. He knew the magic was fading. He just didn't know how to stop the fall. Ronaldinho's decline wasn't sudden. It was a slow surrender. The late nights in Barcelona weren't accidents. They were patterns. He would disappear from training, show up hungover, skip team meetings. When confronted, he'd flash that $1 million smile. "It's okay, I'll fix it in the game." And often, he did, until he couldn't anymore. Inside the club, it became a running joke. You never knew which Ronaldinho would show up, the magician or the ghost. Some close to him say the problem was deeper than parties. It was boredom. Football had always been fun for Ronaldinho, but at the top, it wasn't fun anymore. It was pressure, structure, repetition, tactical briefings and gym sessions. He once confessed to a friend, "I don't understand how people can play football and not smile." But in elite football, the smile had no place. There was no room for innocence, and Ronaldinho wasn't built to live without it. Others believe he was a prisoner of his own myth. As long as he smiled, people assumed he was okay. But there were whispers of loneliness, of homesickness, of mental fatigue. He never adapted to the European lifestyle. He missed Brazil, the music, the beach, the food, the chaos. In Spain and Italy, he was adored but isolated. At one point, Barcelona hired a babysitter, a staff member whose sole job was to keep Ronaldinho out of trouble, to stop him from going out, to make sure he woke up for training. It worked for a while. Then came the women, the alcohol, and the relentless public attention. He was the life of the party, but when the lights went out, who was left? In 2014, years after his prime, a Brazilian journalist asked him, "Do you miss being the best in the world?" He paused for a long time and said, "No, but I miss the way people looked at me." That sentence says everything. Ronaldinho wasn't chasing titles anymore. He was chasing the feeling, that high of adoration, of being worshipped. And when football no longer gave him that, he searched for it elsewhere, in fame, in nightlife, in fleeting friendships. His finances crumbled too. He reportedly lost millions through bad investments and lavish spending. By 2018, Brazilian courts had seized his passport over unpaid environmental fines. In 2020, he entered Paraguay under a fake identity, not for espionage or crime, but for a promotional event. When he was arrested, he told police he thought the passport was a gift from a fan. A gift. That's the tragedy of Ronaldinho. He never saw himself as a brand or a business. He was a boy with a ball, even when the world expected him to be a man with a legacy. The prison incident became symbolic, not of criminal intent, but of how disconnected he had become from reality. In jail, his teammates described him as cheerful, singing, playing ping pong, organizing matches. He scored 5 goals and assisted 3 in the prison futsal final. Even in captivity, he couldn't stop being Ronaldinho, but it was heartbreaking too. Because it confirmed what many feared, that football was the only place he ever felt free. Ronaldinho's decline wasn't caused by a single scandal or injury. It was emotional erosion, the slow breakdown of a spirit that was never designed for the mechanical world of modern football. He didn't train like Cristiano, didn't study tactics like Xavi, didn't fight like Zlatan. He just danced. And when the music stopped, so did he. Today, Ronaldinho exists more as a memory than a man. He does interviews, smiles, promotes brands, plays in charity matches. But those who know him best say there's a sadness behind his eyes now, that he lives in the glow of yesterday, replaying old highlights like bedtime stories. There's a quote from an unnamed Barca staff member. He was the happiest footballer I ever saw, until one day, he wasn't. Ronaldinho's story is not a Greek tragedy. It's not violent or grotesque. It's quieter, sadder. A man who brought the world joy, but couldn't hold on to it for himself. He made us believe in magic. And then, like all magicians, he vanished with a smile. It's easy to call him a wasted talent, to point at the numbers, a short peak, a steep decline, a string of clubs that faded into memory. It's tempting to place him in the drawer marked could have been and move on. But that would be a mistake, because Ronaldinho was never meant to be a player you measured in longevity or stats or records. He wasn't built to dominate eras. He was built to remind us why we love the game in the first place. In a sport increasingly ruled by systems, speed, and spreadsheets, he was an outlier, a joyful rebellion. What makes Ronaldinho so haunting is that he gave us everything, and yet still feels incomplete. Not because he failed to win more, but because he vanished too soon. Like a summer that ends before you're ready, or a dream you forget the moment you wake up. We're left asking questions that don't have clean answers. Did he lose his way, or did the game lose its soul? Ronaldinho didn't adapt to modern football, and maybe that's not entirely his fault. The game changed. It became a science. Data replaced instinct. Smiles became suspicious. Ronaldinho was a time traveler, a relic of street football thrust into a corporate battlefield. In another era, he might have lasted longer. In this one, his flame burned too bright, too fast. Was he a genius undone by fame, or a free spirit never meant to be caged? Critics will tell you he partied too much, trained too little, and took his gift for granted. But maybe the real tragedy is that he played in a world that couldn't understand joy without control. Ronaldinho didn't decline because he stopped caring. He declined because caring in the way modern football demanded simply wasn't in his nature. He didn't want to calculate his diet, or analyze his XG, or press with perfect positioning. He just wanted the ball, space, and a reason to smile. Did we lose him too soon, or did he give us more than we deserved? We ask for perfection. We ask for humility, discipline, consistency. But when someone like Ronaldinho comes along, messy, wild, brilliant, we take it all for granted. We assume he'll always be there, always performing. We forget that joy, too, has a breaking point. Maybe the real question isn't why Ronaldinho fell. It's why we didn't protect him better. Why didn't we notice the weight behind the smile? Why did we cheer his goals but ignore his loneliness? Why did we praise his freedom, only to punish him when he couldn't be tamed? Ronaldinho was the last great symbol of football before it lost its innocence. Before analytics, before algorithms, before academies turned children into machines. He came from the street, played like it was a carnival, and left before the fun was over. At this channel, we don't see Ronaldinho as a failure. We see him as a fleeting miracle, a man who walked onto the pitch and, for a few golden years, reminded the world what football should feel like: magical, unpredictable, alive. Yes, he fell. Yes, he partied. Yes, he wasted chances, but he gave us moments we'll never forget. And that, sometimes, is worth more than 1,000 perfect seasons. Time has moved on. Messi and Ronaldo have rewritten the record books. Haaland and Mbappe are forging a new era. Football has evolved, faster, sharper, colder. But every now and then, a highlight reel flashes across the screen. A no-look pass, a flip-flap, a free kick that bends like a spell. And the crowd, whether 12 or 50, whispers the same name. He is gone from the field, but never from memory. His legacy doesn't live in stats or medals, though he had those too. It lives in feelings. In the smile of a child imitating his trick, in the roar of a crowd when joy overcomes logic, in the silent awe of fans who remember what it felt like to see him dance. Ronaldinho made you believe that football was more than a game. He made it theater, poetry, magic. For every fan who fell in love with the sport because of him, there is no debate about his greatness. Only gratitude. In Brazil, they still call him O Bruxo, the wizard. In Barcelona, he's remembered not just for the goals, but for the healing. When he arrived, the club was broken. When he left, it was reborn, ready to give the world Messi. Even Lionel himself once said, Ronaldinho was responsible for the change in Barca. He made the people believe again. And that might be his greatest legacy. Ronaldinho didn't just change matches. He changed moods. He brought joy to a cynical sport. He made the world lighter for just a moment. And though he slipped, though he faded, though the ending was far from perfect, maybe that's the point. Some stories aren't meant to last, but they stay with you anyway. So when someone asks you, who was Ronaldinho? Don't just list the clubs, the goals, the trophies. Tell them he was the smile of football, the last magician, the ghost of Barcelona, who, just for a while, made the whole world believe.